Great. Fantastic. So thank you, Alan, for sparing your morning.
Oh, that's all right. As long as I get to drink my coffee while recording this, I think we're okay.
Uh, of course, you're allowed pee breaks as well if you need some.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were just chatting about our pre-internet lives,
Yeah.
and we're both from a generation where we were used to, I don't know, not typing stories out on a typewriter. No, I hope not.
Well, I
But
I grew up with a typewriter. My dad got me, he taught me how to type on a typewriter. So that was a wonderful, whole different experience.
really, and you
Yeah.
were doing what on the typewriter? Was it formal essays for school or what?
Well, yeah, there was formal essays for school later on. When I was in university, I bought myself a electric typewriter, which was kind of weird. You have a whole line that you fill in the LCD, and when you're ready to print that, you hit enter, and it so you could make corrections before you ruined your paper.
Wow.
Uh, you
Okay.
probably also remember carbon paper. Um,
I
you know,
remember carbon paper. I hope
yeah,
who's watching this knows what carbon paper means.
that's right. The smell, you remember the smell of it? I remember the smell.
Yes, I like the smell of carbon paper.
Yeah, that's
The
right.
stencil.
Hmm.
Yeah, so nostalgia. So obviously we're in an era where those things don't get used anymore, at least not in amongst the masses.
Yeah,
As print, we started off as print. You started off as a print journalist, I take it.
I started in radio actually.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so it was radio first, and then TV, Newswires, magazine. Yeah, and then digital. So yeah, it's been a whole journey, but mostly in TV. Most of my career has been in TV.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, so in that case, but we still, I suppose, still want to hold on to the pre-internet days in the sense of,
Yeah.
conversations with students, with colleagues, in conferences. Why do you think there is that nostalgia in amongst us?
Yeah, I love this question. I think a lot about this because the work that we do at Splice is really in trying to transform mindsets and transform newsrooms so that we can move forward. We just want to get on with it.
Yeah.
Um, I have seen newsrooms spend like for the last decade trying to figure out how to recreate all of this stuff in digital, right? And then now that it's all in digital, they're like, okay, but then it doesn't make sense for us from a P&L perspective. Um, so that's been quite a bit of a struggle. I think people hold on to these notions of journalism with a capital J, as I like to call it, because we feel like these were skills that took us decades to hone. Um, and like I spent a lot of time in newsrooms, working my way up. Um, and I always remember how hard it was at every turn when you wanted to make a big jump. You know, very often your managers would say, "Oh, you've only been here for 3 years. You've only been here for 4 years. How could you possibly know how to do this?" Um, and those people would try to slow you down, put speed bumps in your way. Um, there is so much of journalism production in the old sense that was about earning the right to try something new.
Mm,
um, right, if you wanted to be a line producer in a TV company, you would have to spend 3-4 years to get there. You got to earn that trust. And also, I mean, let's keep in mind that some of this production stuff, the workflows were quite complex, and so therefore you needed to be able to work with different people. You needed to be able to think quickly, and move quickly. And so I think there's a lot of us in old media circles that try to hold on to these things because we believe that those steps are important. They were necessary at that stage because of the production process. Um, but at the same time, we often forget that a lot of these steps are now redundant because the tools have improved significantly, the
yeah.
costs have come down significantly, and we're just very unwilling to accept it because we've spent decades of our careers trying to hone this stuff. Um, and also with that, is the notion that all of this needs to be expensive. Journalism needs to be expensive because we need to be able to
Mm.
pay ourselves these salaries, right? So there's a bit of that as well.
Mm. How then do you think, because of the hard work and the earning of the rights to to command, OC of the newsroom, deciding the news agenda for the day, how do you think technology's made it cheap? But do you think technology has also diluted that value of hard work?
Yeah, I think, well, I would say that technology has removed a few of these steps, removed a
Right.
few of these gatekeepers along the way. Social media is a
Mm.
great example of that, uh, where everyone's able to publish whatever they want and have a voice and a say, right? This is like the weirdest. If you were to explain this, to someone who was born pre-digital like us, the fact that today anyone can have a voice in that space in social media, on a digital platform. I mean, that idea is astounding, right?
Mm.
When we were growing up, the only way to reach a mass audience would be, through mass media, right? You buy, you get something printed in the newspaper, your articles in the paper, you get a broadcast out. Your ability to get the word out was incredibly expensive, but also very, very cumbersome. You needed skills for that stuff. And now, anyone with a phone gets to do it.
But do they earn the right to do it?
Well, did they not have the right to speech was the original question, right? I think,
Yeah.
but I think what's interesting now is it's no longer a question of free speech. It's whether you have the right to reach,
Mm.
whether you have the right to unlimited, unfettered distribution of whatever you're trying to put out there. So, like Facebook could either take down your content outright, or they could suppress it so that fewer people see it. And that
Mm.
is something I think that's probably more important in this day and age. Um, I think everybody has the ability to put something out there in the digital world. Whether it gets seen, whether it gets amplified, is something else altogether.
So it's I suppose at one point before big brands have come into to set algorithms or even agendas, right, to control, when people did have the power literally in their hands to be
Hmm.
able to communicate messages of any sort, it democratizes the whole space, right? Everyone
Yeah.
from each level. It's no longer an elite. I won't say journalism is an elitist a profession, but I think it gives you a sense of power to be able to spread certain, to share certain bits of news.
Yeah, that's right.
um, when do you think the change happened, that the not the change but the shift from the democratization to big brands realizing that they do have control over what we put out there with our tools? When do you think that shift happened?
I think it was always part of what social media was meant to
Right.
be. It was meant to be able to give people a quick way of publishing something,
Mm.
no matter how frivolous it was, or was it factual, was it important, was it not? It really didn't matter.
Mm.
Um, so that is what got it moving, I would say. And and then the algorithms are all primed toward engagement, right? So
Mm.
the algorithms program to figure out exactly what does well, what people are engaging with, and then amplifying it, so that more people see it. Which is a very simple way of thinking about it, but it's something that has changed, the space dramatically, in how people discover content.
Mm, mm. We've been talking about this whole two theories, technological determinism and social determinism. So
Yeah.
we talked about how algorithms are set to fire up certain newsfeed based on what you search, and
Yeah.
then the data is sought, etc. And then the other argument is that it's not primarily down to the data they collect; it's actually us, our free will, denoting what goes into the search engine. I don't know what do you think is happening? Do you think that it is technology that is driving how we read news?
Oh, absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
for one, all of us are reading news, or at least I would say 80% of us are getting our news through platforms, right?
Mm,
The old way would be to turn on the 7 p.m. broadcast, listen to the BBC, or buy a newspaper. Most of those activities no longer exist, right?
mm,
Um, so yeah, so on that basis alone, it's really quite remarkable if you were to try to track how you came across every bit of news, like today.
mm,
You'd be surprised. I mean, all of this stuff is driven by algorithms somewhere. Um, it may be, so if you're looking at Facebook, for example, and that's a really easy example, right? Everything that you see on Facebook is primed to do exactly that, to take what people around you find interesting and have engaged with, and then amplifying to
mm,
you, right? So it reaches
mm,
someone like you who would then engage with it and then keep amplifying it. um, I think what's really remarkable about this year is that because it's a COVID year, people are
mm,
spending more time at home, people are spending
mm,
more time on social platforms. The amount of outrage that has occurred in this space this year has been intense, and none of this would have been possible without social media. I think
mm,
Black Lives Matter, for example, as a global movement, would not have been possible if it wasn't for COVID and if it wasn't for the social platforms. Um, it's This year has been an incredibly easy year for algorithms to whip us all up into this frenzy, into this state of outrage over every single thing, because we're all spending more time on it.
mm. So as a newsmaker, right, you generate content, you also look for news, you're a journalist yourself. How does it make you feel as a journalist when you have algorithms sort of deciding what content your consumer reads?
I know that's a hard one, right? I think the days are gone where one of the core beliefs at Splice is that the mass media model is done. It's over. There's no point trying to recreate it, right? Because the old way of working was to try to get as many people to buy your newspaper, um, so that you can get advertisers to run an ad in there with the hope that these millions of people would see the ad.
Mm,
Same thing with a broadcast, right? That model could only work if you could reach a lot of people so that you can run ads against those. Um, so the whole plan there was to pack as much as possible into a single service. So if you
mm,
look at all the different sections in a newspaper, sports, news, obviously, lifestyle, cruises, travel, that kind of stuff. They all exist not because people wanted them,
mm,
they exist because advertisers wanted them. And this was an easy way to package and bundle, right? So all of that is what made mass media successful. That was how it ran as a business. With digital, all of this stuff has been unbundled. So every single thing that you're interested in, you can go and find on a digital platform somewhere. Um, so, from that perspective, all of this stuff has changed. So it's no longer just sports; it's now soccer, and it's no longer just soccer; it's EPL. So it's digital allows you to go as tiny as you want to find a niche that you really care about. And this is what mass media could never offer you, because the whole premise of mass media was to be mass and to be for everyone, but it was probably not for everyone. Now that we have the numbers to prove it, we have a better idea of what that's about. um, so as an editorial person, I look at this and I think,
mm,
my understanding of the world is really tiny. My ability to say what's important is really tiny, and it's getting smaller every single day, I believe.
really?
Yeah, just because all of us have different interests, right? All of us want to spend our time doing different things, and so a good example of this is YouTube. Anything that you're interested in, you could go to YouTube and learn today. That super long tail of content, of very, very niche content, is something that we have never seen as a civilization before,
Mm,
because it was
mm,
always one size fits all content. And now you've got all of this fragmented into every single niche category, every single interest that's out there. Um, And that's exactly why our sense of truth has been fragmented as well, right? Everyone has a version of truth that they want to adhere to, whether it's
Mm.
factual or not, but it is truth to them. Um, and this is a digital thing. I think, over time we will see this continuously, continue to fragment, such that every single thing that you care about, whether you want to call it news or if it's a
Mm.
lifestyle or any kind of information, you will find it through very niche channels.
So it's caused a fragmentation of
Hmm.
content and consumption.
Consumption,
Yeah.
content, the creation of it, the discovery of it.
Wow.
Uh, I mean, like for me, I have multiple apps on my phone to get the news that I want. Obviously, I have like the New York Times, because that gives me that big, broad, one broad point of view. But then I also, go down rabbit holes in Reddit, for example,
Mm.
looking at
Mm.
things that interest me, subjects that I care about. I also subscribe to a bunch of people on YouTube, so whenever they post something, I get notified because I want their point of view on something, right? Um, so there's so many different ways in which we are now picking and choosing what we want to understand about the world,
Mm.
which could be good, could be bad, right? If you were an educator, how would you think about that? If you were, say, a primary school educator or a secondary
Mm.
school educator,
Mm.
how much room is there for this slivering of knowledge?
Mm.
Um, so that's I think something worth keeping in mind, and I think we're seeing some of this stuff extend into the education space as
Yeah.
well, because now a new generation that's out there that will pick and choose what they want to learn about the world. There will obviously be some kind of fundamental basics, but then once you pass that, um, why not learn what is essential to you, in terms of
Mm.
knowledge? So
Mm.
yeah, so the mass education model is also
Yeah.
is the next one to go.
Actually, so we're trying. You see, we're all trying here to do different things. So,
Mm,
as a producer, as someone who runs a business, then
mm.
how has it made your fragmentation? How difficult is your job today?
It's actually
Or
easier,
easier?
because, and I'll tell you why. We are a B2B service.
Mm.
Our goal at Splice is to help companies transform themselves, right?
Mm.
So if that is the only thing that we care about, we don't have to do everything else. We don't need a 24-hour news cycle about, the news industry. We just need very specific things that we want to see
Mm.
or hear about or ask about.
Mm.
Um, so that has changed the way we think about news production, because, you know, it doesn't matter if I don't publish something this week or next week, if I
Mm.
publish only one thing a month, or if I did it in a video format, or if I did it in an audio format, or I did it as a, as a social post. Um, all of these things start to change, because when you are a B2B player, you know exactly what your customers want from you, right? In our world, we're not trying to reach 1 million people. We're probably trying to reach maybe 1,000 people in this space
Mm.
who believe in our principles, right? And to whom we can add value to for the work that they do, and hopefully by doing that, they will employ us as consultants. We can come in and help them, or we can help build a program that suits them, or something like that, right? So for us, we see the future to be in niche media
Mm.
companies like ours.
Mm.
We are very specific in who we want to target, who we want to derive revenue from.
Mm.
um, and that has changed, I think, the way we work and the way we think about this stuff.
Mm. So what would you, I don't know whether it's an advice or what would you say, those consumers now with access to so much niche knowledge and at their disposal, then who equips them with the fundamental values of, truth versus lies?
That's
The
right.
family? I don't know. Schools? You and me as journalists? How? When we do put out,
I agree.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got two young kids who are in primary
Yeah.
schools, so so this is something that's close to my heart. I think, you know, I think there is so we talk a lot about media literacy, right? And
Yeah.
media literacy is really digital literacy these days. It is how to look at a piece of information and be skeptical about it, find ways to interrogate it, finding ways to corroborate it.
Mm,
Understanding how algorithms work is a big thing in this literacy space, and I think a lot of people don't understand why they're seeing a piece of content in their newsfeed.
mm,
I think that's very important. We all have to be conscious of how that information got to us and what are the reasons behind that.
mm,
Um, I think that is very important. So, so like so one way to teach kids stuff like that is, so like something really frivolous here, like taking my so you know when the kids and I would go out, we go to restaurants, whatever,
mm,
um, we would have a conversation about the quality of the food, and then we look at Google Maps to see what the ratings were, and to understand how the ratings came about.
mm,
How does someone rate stuff like that? And
mm,
do I, as someone who's tasted the food, have to agree or not? Right. So
mm,
that's one way of kind of teaching that. Um, Other ways would be, like my daughter would want to download apps into her phone. She would ask me for permission to to do that. So we would look at the reviews again. How many reviews were there? 5-star reviews. What are some of the problems that people called out? Do we agree with that? Do we think that these are blockers? I would, like, for example, she knows that she should never download an app that has only been downloaded maybe 1,000 times,
mm,
with like a 2-star rating. And then in the comments someone might say, oh, there's this is a scam, or this is a whatever. So like you're teaching them how to use technology,
yeah.
and the way to think about this stuff, the way to think about overall like media literacy, is really to start with the digital tools. Like you really need to understand what this stuff is about. When you get a random text message, what do you do about that? you know
Mm, mm, mm,
um, yeah, so all of this stuff has kind of melted together
mm,
in that space, which is good and bad. I think young kids are growing up in that world, and they are quite astute in
yeah.
figuring out, like,
Yeah.
this is not true. This is they are learning skepticism at an early age, which I think is a very good thing.
Mm,
Because once you have that skepticism, you can then extend that into news and information, right? Something a bit harder. So like, my kids and I, we would watch, we've been watching the Trump debate, for example, and just hearing them call out bullshit made me very proud.
'Cause I think that falls too as well, right? With there's so much avenues to be able to question and to be, I don't know, curious, but to
Mm,
question.
yeah,
Uh, okay, maybe one more question. Then,
sure.
if you could look into your crystal ball and predict how much media will change, consumption and production, do you see it more fragmented, or do you see some sort of consolidation? How would you?
Absolute fragmentation.
Yeah.
I think the amazing thing, good or bad, right? And maybe we just need to get on and just embrace this trend, right? And the trend
Mm,
is that every single person with an interest in something is able to create something that reaches other people and provides a level of value for for other people. The future will be made up of very niche media companies, and niche doesn't mean small, right? It could be thousands of people who sign up to something. It could be 10,000 people. Niche doesn't mean it's small. Niche means it's very specific, and it has a lot of deep knowledge in one area that is distinct,
mm,
that you can't find from regular mainstream media.
mm,
Um, so newsletters are a good example of that. You see this in the number of newsletters for very specific topics now, which is really amazing to see. written by people who've come from the old world of journalism and extending, that knowledge into that space. So, in the Malaysia context, it would be Between the Lines, which is fantastic for that kind of stuff. That started out of a frustration for the way mass media was covering mass news, right? So they become very specific. You also see very high profile journalists who've moved, for example, to Substack to create something of their own. Casey Newton is a case in point, just from the past 2 weeks alone. Casey Newton probably, I don't know what his numbers are like, but he does one thing and he does it really well, right? He writes about what the platforms are doing, and that is very niche, but it's also very powerful, and it's very much in demand by people who are in the policy space, or journalists or scholars, or like he speaks to a very to a segment that he understands very well. So the future will be made up of people like that, people who have deep expertise in one area and are able to use the platforms to create a media business of their own.
Cool. Wow. Yeah. Maybe that's the way it's going to go. Okay, I will wrap this up right now. And so thank you so much, Alan, for your time. And you'll be on Discord. Hopefully we'll have very curious and skeptical questions for you as the week goes by.
Okay.
So thanks, and have a good morning then for you. I'll just
Thank
stop.
you.